To Adelaide, the former Liberal MP, Leader of the House, Christopher Pyne, joins me live now. I'm happy to say you're a member, one of us now. You're a member of the press, Christopher Pyne, with your column and your, no doubt, soon-to-be award-winning podcast. How concerned are you about press freedom now that you're on the other side?
Well, Laura, I'm not a commentator on the current government or even the previous government's policies anymore, but I know that in Australia we've always had a stricter approach than a lot of other Western nations around the world to press freedom. I'm not sure why that is. I think it's just been a traditional approach from different governments, and since 9/11 and the rise of Islamic terrorism around the world, we have tightened that even further, both sides of politics. Now, whether we've achieved the right balance is very much in the eye of the beholder. There's certainly been an uptick in the last 6 months, 12 months of journalists being put under the microscope, if you like, if you can call Annika Smethurst's raid on her house being put under the microscope. And I think it's good for us to debate freedom of the press and whether we've achieved the right balance. And I'm sure the Prime Minister, the Attorney General are open to that debate. And if we decide to turn back the dial a bit, well, that'll be good news for the media, and the politicians will have responded positively. Yeah,
I mean, you were in Parliament for decades. Can you explain how we got to this point where you say, yes, you know, our press freedoms are more stringent than any Western democracies, really? I know in the last, 6 or 7 years, we've been asked to give up more of those freedoms and, a changing national security environment. I think most of us do accept that. But at what point did we go too far, and when was it?
Well, I think in Australia we've always had a high level of trust for government. We've understood that we don't have the big brother approach that some governments have had over the years, and I think we've trusted our governments to try and get the balance right. Obviously, our journalists and our politicians cooperate to try and protect people, which is a very important priority. And we haven't had things like the Pentagon Papers or the Vietnam War leaking of national security information during the Nixon era that other countries have seen. And so I think we've become, over the years, maybe a very used to the government having more of a say than perhaps countries like Great Britain, where their press seems to be terribly free. Now, perhaps we might have got to the point where that needs to be reviewed, and the media outlets are quite rightly running a campaign to have that reviewed, and good luck to them. That's what democracy is all about. The politicians either respond or they don't.
Now you have a whole new perspective from outside of the bubble, if you like.
I do.
It's a brave government that takes on the media in this way, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say the government has taken on the media.
Well,
both Labor and Liberal. Yes, there seems to be a campaign, certainly out of the News Limited papers that we've all seen today, where they want to put this issue on the agenda. And look, they're within their rights to do so. And as the Prime Minister says, he wants people to be within the law. If the law is too stringent, then it can be dialed back. That's a matter for the Attorney General, the Prime Minister and others to consider. I'd be interested to see what the Labor Party says about it, because they've largely supported the government's changes over the years, just as we did in the Rudd and Gillard period, because we were responding to terrorism that was designed to kill and maim the Australian public.
Well, let's get to Pyne Time, the podcast then. I've got to say, I listened to the first one, 10 or 15 minutes in. I wasn't sure whether it was about you or Peter Hellier.
I know, it's a terrible problem. Annabelle Crabb comes out today, and she said to my wife that she felt it was actually a podcast about me using people as a prop so I could talk about myself more. Of course, she is ultra-critical. Look, last week was Pete Hellier. It was great fun. The idea of my podcasts are for me to interview people that I know well who've had fun with me over the years. You might even get a Guernsey if you're lucky, Laura, if you're prepared to say hello, if you're prepared to say yes. Next week we've got Barry Cassidy after his retirement from the ABC, and then we get into the political class a bit more with some blockbuster political people who've known me very well. But look, podcasting's good fun. I hadn't realised how much fun it could be, and it's nice to just sort of be able to kick back, relax and tell a few stories.
Yeah, and you did tell a few stories with Peter Hellier as well about, you know, your ambitions to become Prime Minister. You entered Parliament at 25 years old. Did you ever have a real crack at that? Do you think you ever had the factional support?
Well, I preferred to find my place in the solar system. I worked out long ago that my place was to be the Leader of the House, member of the leadership group, a cabinet minister, one of the leaders of the moderate grouping in the parliamentary party, and I became very pleased and satisfied with that position as opposed to being the leader. I think everyone's got to know their place in the solar system. I think the leaders are usually going to come from the eastern seaboard, and they're not usually going to be from the smaller Liberal side of the party unless they're a star like Malcolm Turnbull. And I worked that out pretty early, and I think working out where your position is in the great firmament of politics means that you have a happy career and you leave happy, as I have done.
And have you found someone to fetch that lemon for your gin and tonics yet?
Look, everybody's offering me lemons and limes on a constant basis these days. I've got several new lemon trees which were given to me after I left, so we've done quite well out of that speech, Laura.
OK, Christopher Pyne, appreciate your time. Good luck with the podcast. And it launches...
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Peter.
And it will drop again today.
Are you going to accept his invitation?
Sure.
There you go.
I will.